Mm-hmm. And we're live. Welcome to Seller Sessions. My name is Sharon Evan. Today is my debut on Seller Sessions, and I have come in with a big bang. I have got here Adam Runquist as my first guest, aka Adam Heist. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Sharon. Great to have you on.
How are
And be
you?
your first interviewee. It's an honor.
I know, it's funny that I actually have butterflies in my stomach because I was just telling you this off camera because I've done so many of these, but I've never been the host. So I'm super excited. So Adam, for the people who don't know you, which I'm sure is not that many people, let's tell them a little bit about you so that everyone can sort of get to know you and your story and who you are. And yeah.
Cool. Do you want me to give you like the 1 to 2 minute version and you ask questions, or do you want me to give the full on 5 to 10 minute spiel?
Let's go with the flow, whatever comes out. I told you before we started, I told you that that we're just going with the flow. Cool. So well, we've already got 21 people here, by the way.
I'll do like the 5-10 minute spiel and then just like interject with questions as needed. So hey, Yaro, good to see you. So yeah, I mean, I've got I think a bit of an interesting backstory into Amazon. I've become more public since late May when I launched a YouTube channel. So that's kind of, I think, my claim to fame, so to speak. I usually put out a video or two a week, kind of deep diving into my process on launches and kind of how I see the Amazon game and piecing it together from mental side stuff to kind of deep dive content. I think like revealing numbers and things, I don't reveal my brands and stuff like that. I'm not that ballsy yet, but numbers. So I think I kind of like open book. That's kind of my approach. I'm not selling courses and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of got into the game. But my backstory, how I got into Amazon originally is I think kind of an interesting one and probably relatively unique.
Adam, one sec. People are writing that they're very quiet. Hold on, let me just see. I can hear you very well. I don't know why someone wrote that. Let me just check that everyone can hear. Can you guys hear us? There you go. Turned it up a bit.
Yeah, let me just double check my audio. Yeah.
I can hear you well.
Yeah, I turned it up a little bit too, but
yeah, that's good.
Hopefully that helps.
Mine's up too. You can hear me well.
Yep.
All right. Sorry. Cool. You were just in the middle of saying that you've become popular ever since you don't share your brand. I can hear Sharon loud.
Can you hear me or am I still quiet?
I can hear. Hey guys. Okay. If Talia can hear us, we're fine.
All right. Good.
It may just be whoever's you are loud. Adam is not. Okay. William's saying that you're not loud. I think you're okay now though.
Okay. Yeah, I cranked it up kind of as high as it'll go. So hopefully that does it.
Cool. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So kind of an interesting backstory. I think like most people come in as like the, ex-eBayer that like had e-com experience and kind of got into the Amazon game through that. That's at least I think the more traditional story for people that got in 2015, 2016. And then there's kind of been like, I think the side hustle crew, which I'm a little bit a part of that, but I actually have kind of more of a professional background. So I actually worked for a Fortune 300 energy company in the US. So there's like 13 states within the US where energy is deregulated. So kind of like your cell phone plan, you can decide who your electricity provider is. So as part of that, I was running some, kind of heading up some of the smaller brands on that. And we just decided, hey, a good way to grow this thing is just to buy smaller electricity brands. So I went for probably the better part of 2 years. And I basically I was like the Thrasio for electricity companies. I was basically buying up smaller electricity companies, folding them into the fray. And that was kind of a big part of our growth. Around, I want to say it was probably 2015-ish, something like that, we started to realize that like no one likes electricity bills, like, or electricity companies. It's like totally poor satisfaction. It's like Comcast or whatever, right? Like no one likes it. So we struck up a deal with actually Nest thermostats. Google has since bought them, but it's like the smart thermostat, like the iPhone with thermostats. So we synced that up and made it like, hey, if you sign up for a 2-year electricity plan, you get this Nest thermostat. And people went bonkers. Like it was like we sold like a ridiculous amount of them. And so the higher ups, at the Fortune 300, like, hey, we need to like get into physical products. So I then went on a search with some other folks to figure out, hey, we need to find a physical products brand to buy. And so that whole effort led to acquiring a company here in Utah that's kind of in the kind of battery solar kind of backup space. And
You're originally from Canada, right?
I am, yeah. So I was
Originally
born and
Canadian.
raised, raised Canada. After college, I kind of moved to Texas. So I spent about 13 years in Texas, and then I've been here in Utah for like 3.5 or so. So yeah,
Okay,
so through that, like we bought that company for a decent amount of money. And then they kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Adam, we need somebody to kind of help run this thing and kind of figure out and realize the case. When you buy a company, it's all about like getting your money back, right? And realizing that growth case." So came out to Utah, kind of heading up the operations, and then I was basically like, my whole goal was to turn over rocks and uncover value. One of those rocks was Amazon. So as most, at least call it 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, most retail centric brands, their way into Amazon is through the 1P, which not a lot of, I think, kind of private labelers know about it. But
can you explain to the audience what 1P means?
Totally, yeah. So 1P is basically where like somebody at Amazon, much like a buyer at a retail store, a physical retail store, like cuts POs and buys product for known brands, because they basically want to have anybody that shops in the real world, so to speak, they want it to be available on Amazon. So they track these brands in, and basically on a weekly basis, they cut a PO. So we get a PO every Monday. We'd ship the product in, and then Amazon would do everything. So we didn't have to do advertising. We didn't set up the listing. We provided some content, but that was kind of it. The difference though is you're giving up like at least two times the margin. So one of the rocks I turned over was like, holy shit, like if we actually just figured this thing out, flipped it over to 3P, which was less common, companies going from 1P to 3P at the time. It's pretty common now. Like we can double the margins. I think at the time we were doing about 3 million a year on Amazon at that point. So 3 million, like double the margin on 3 million, even if we didn't even see growth on the top line. So yeah, so the challenge though is to flip over to 3P, you had to understand Amazon. And so that kind of like was a deep dive into, okay, well, how do you set up listings? What's this game? What's pay-per-click? And I've got kind of an obsessive personality. And when I find stuff really interesting, I'm like all in. And so match that with the fact that I always had kind of side hustles and entrepreneurial stuff. I was like, holy shit. Like, I don't think people realize how badass this Amazon. And that kind of led me into understanding, how do you create your own brands? At the time I was traveling, I was spending about 20 million bucks a year in China through that brand. And so I was traveling to China and like understanding the China game. My WeChat chops were like up to snuff. So I'm like, hey, I know how to go to China now. I know WeChat. I've got a good business head on my shoulders and kind of understand that. And I kind of had the itch, right? I think like most of us, we get that itch where we just realize that corporate life is a lot of bullshit. And even good corporate life with good salaries, there's just something that's missing there. So I think the combination of all those things kind of led me to launch some of my own brands. So now I've got 3 of my own brands. I'm kind of partnered in 2 others. So yeah, that's kind of my foray, which is a bit of a backdoor in Amazon for sure.
So how long has it been, like when did you start selling your own brands on Amazon? How long have you been on Amazon now?
I think like a little shy of 3 years, I think. Somewhere in that 2
Oh, wow.
years. So pretty new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day that it's because Amazon is so dynamic, right? It changes all the time. Even people like, I'm sure you know that I do one-on-one coaching, and I was thinking about it, and I've got this newbie. He's not a newbie, but he started 1.5 years ago, and he's about to sell his brand. Like, he's working on selling his brand.
Awesome.
And I was like, I haven't even sold my brands yet, and I was like, this dude started 1.5 years ago, and he's already like, he knows so much. It's just so crazy. And I was thinking about it. It doesn't really matter whether you're on, selling on Amazon for 1.5 years, for 3 years. It's so dynamic that it's so easy to kick ass really quick.
It's funny. I call it like getting your Amazon degree, which is like and that's why I find it. You see all these like bigger consolidators coming into the space, and they're just going to buy up these Amazon brands, and it's all going to be awesome and whatever else. But it's like, I've told others, I'm like, they're smart, they understand all this stuff, but like, no one as smart or as new or naive as they are. There's no easy path to this. Like, we all have to get an Amazon degree, and it's really a school of hard knocks. Some of it's building up scar tissue from getting your clock clean and getting punched in the face, which it's all gonna happen sometimes with more regularity than others. And then there's just the mechanical, tactical knowledge of just understanding the game and how it all works. And so yeah, honestly, I think you're right. I think anybody that even has a year in the Amazon space, like, that is a pretty deadly skill set, and like that, you've earned your stripes and your Amazon degree at that point, and it's a pretty awesome skill set. But everyone's got to start from somewhere, so for sure.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people here. I just want us to be able to quickly acknowledge some people that are here. Cool. So hello to Yarrow. Yarrow says hi to us. And Steve Kong says good luck on the Amazon podcast. Thank you. And, how do you pronounce that? Barb and Charlie. I'm pretty sure it's Barbara and Charlie. Hello, Sharon, Heather, Adam. We have some from Facebook user. Let's just see who else we have here. I know that we have the beautiful Isabella here. We can't see that it says Isabella, but that's Isabella. Baptiste is here. Hello. Michelle Venton, who's like one of the most kick-ass women in the world, is here. Victoria Ann is here. And Melissa is here as well. Melissa Simonson. Hey, Adam, are you on what's it called? On Clubhouse yet?
I am. I haven't really used it much or listened much. I'm sure I'll figure it out once I dive into it, but I get like all the notifications on my phone, and I'm gonna kind of let the dust settle a little bit, and then I'll jump in. But technically, yes, I'm a member, but I'm not an active. I've never been in a room or anything like that.
I was on it yesterday, and I was thinking about how I need to tell you to come onto it. I was just thinking about it because I was in there with Melissa yesterday. Yeah. And I was like, oh, you can drop some like crazy bombs down there. So that's good. Cybe's here as well. Wow, we've got so many people in here. I think we've got like heaps of people here. So hello to everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us. And this is the last one that we'll get into. Hi, I just made shipping plan for new listings, still faced with 200. All right, we'll hit the questions and stuff later. So I think that what I was thinking about, what is it that we can both speak about? And I was like, oh, there's just so much, because I think you and I do things a little differently, but we're both on like the same, we're all about branding, right? And not just selling a product, but actually building a brand and things like that. And your latest YouTube video, so for those of you that don't know, both myself and Adam have YouTube channels, so you should subscribe to our channels. But both Adam put out a video the other day, and you were talking about strategies to get your product ranked. And you shared how you got your product ranked with the #1 bestseller badge. And I thought that would be an amazing thing to start with for 2021. So I thought that we could get into some of the strategies that you were using in 2020, and that I'm sure you're going to be using for 2021 as well, for ranking your new products. And obviously, if we have questions, etc., I'll stop and chime in as well.
Cool. Yeah.
So
let's dive into it. So like the earlier part of my I've always kind of been about brand and kind of photography and imagery and stuff like that. So I've always had a visual element to my brand. So that's kind of been consistent. But my launch strategy changed about a year ago. So I was pretty heavy into the rebate game, like Facebook ads to rebates. I never did the 100% off stuff, but that was always kind of part of the arsenal just because it worked and it was like relatively easy. So that was kind of my mainstay, and frankly didn't take a ton of effort. It was pretty easy to build an audience and kind of build that up, pretty easy to rank. But then I kind of noticed about this time last year, frankly, it was kind of December. I think the last campaign that I did kind of traditional Facebook ad to rebates was last December. It was just something was off. Like it was starting to get weird, and the value of it had started to erode pretty significantly. Go ahead.
When we talk last December, like we mean December 2020 or December 2019?
No, sorry, 2019. My apologies.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Yeah, we're already in 21.
Yeah. We're 2021.
6 weeks ago, Amazon. No, like 13 months ago. So I never I always knew that the gig would come up at some point, but I kind of started to see it then. So I'm like, okay, I gotta get creative here and then mix it up. And so I had to kind of re-engineer and reimagine what my launch process would look like. Luckily, I'd built up a little bit of a pocket of an audience for most of my brands at that point, so I could still tap into that. But I'm like, so I was all about experimenting. So like every single launch, I usually do a launch every 6 weeks or so, kind of depending. I'm always testing. I'm just kind of interested to test different things. So what that's culminated in, I would say, and really kind of gotten pretty dialed here. It's been proven out the last 2 or 3 launches specifically, where I've got new release badges and just kind of really struck it pretty quickly. Is kind of a 6-step approach that I've been using that's worked really well. I'll maybe get into the front end later. I know you're big into product research and how you do that. We can kind of, because if you don't get that right, you're kind of screwed anyway. But the general process, assuming, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that obviously anything that you're talking about, the number one thing is making sure you've got the right product, because you can get your product to page 1 to the top, but if your product's shit, it's not going to stay there. Yeah. So of course we're assuming that you've got the good product, you've put 100% into it, etc., and now you're launching it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think the important thing that people like should think about just at the outset when you think about ranking is it literally is a mathematical algorithm. Like this isn't some like product manager dude in Seattle that's like, who do I like on this? Like that's not how I think people humanize the experience a little bit too much. The customer experience is very human, but the ranking experience is very mathematical. And so it's about figuring out the mathematical and algorithmic signals to send to Amazon to cue them into realizing, hey, this ASIN, which is a number to them, needs to be kind of ranked highly. So I think that's important just to realize it's not human, it's mathematical. So part of me understanding like what that would look like is there's rules, kind of like the EU has a privacy rule. California's got a privacy rule where basically any customer in the US can call on any company in the e-commerce space and ask, or software company, what data did they house on you? So I'm like, that's interesting. So I'm just like, shit, I wonder if I could do this for my personal Amazon account that I shop with. So I put in the request for California, and sure enough, I got 23 zip folders worth of data. It was like insane. So
I watched that video of yours. I've seen you put a video on this. I've seen it. It's a crazy video.
Yeah. So I literally spent like 6 hours. Again, like the obsessive personality, right? I'm like, this is crazy. So I went through every single one of those folders. My wife and I shop on the same Amazon seller account. So this is literally going back 9 years since we've been shopping on Amazon. Every click, every search, every add to cart, every IP address, every Wi-Fi connection, everything we've purchased, everything we've watched on Amazon Prime, everything we've like Alexa stuff, data. It's nuts. But so I honed in specifically on the Amazon.com shopping experience. And the fact that they tracked that data, while it was a little like eye-opening, wasn't all that surprising. But a couple of surprising nuggets for sure is they absolutely track the source of the traffic. So if you came from outside of Amazon, they've got tags as to where you originated. And if you came from an ad outside of Amazon, they've got those tags as well. So that was kind of probably one of the more interesting findings, in addition to just all the footprint that you leave behind from an Amazon standpoint. So that kind of cued me in. I'd kind of been testing external ads, but that kind of cued me in like, hey, there might be something there. So step one for me was to really kind of test all external traffic sources I could. So that was kind of one element. The other element was kind of a deep dive, like realizing that this is mathematical and it really is a search engine. That's what Amazon is. It's a shopping search engine, is to really understand keywords. And so I've got a kind of another deep dive process that I use to basically, I look at keywords like the monthly searches for a particular category. I look at that like the market size. The market size isn't the revenue. The market size is how many eyeballs are seeking this kind of product out. And then my goal is to understand, where are people that are doing well or not well? Where are they ranking? Like what eyeballs are they attracting? And basically optimizing for and ranking for as many of those keywords and eyeballs as humanly possible. So my goal coming in, so I think a lot of people look at it like, hey, I get like 10 to 20 words that really matter. Like when I'm going after stuff, it's like 800 words. So a combination of like deep dive into keyword analysis matched with driving external traffic and having kind of a very specific pay-per-click approach sends these signals to Amazon when you set your ASIN up correctly and take advantage of Honeymoon. That's just ballistic. And it's worked fantastically kind of over last year and kind of honed it in and dialed it in. So that's it at a high level, but we can kind of get into specifics as we've got questions.
Yeah, so first of all, I watched that video of yours, and it's something that we didn't know, right? We knew that Amazon has all this data on us, but I think that you shared in that video, it was insane the amount of data that they have on us, and they literally know everything, right? Which is crazy. Well, and I think I've seen your keyword process, and I do something similar to your keyword process. just a little bit different on the end, because what I do after that is I then take those keywords and I don't know if you've seen, I've got a 3-tier process, like 3-tier keywords. So my first tier is the keywords that explain exactly what my product is, right? Which is usually like the longer tails. Second tier, and then the third tier. So I then take those keywords and then I put them into tiers, and that's how I choose when I go after what, right? Because most of my products, or most of the way that I do it, is very niche-y. I try and not go after the big, huge products.
Yep.
So that's the way that I do it. And I love your keyword process. Like, you've got a great video on that. I think it's called the Keyword Masterclass. Amazing video. And I think that understanding where to place your product in the first 3 weeks to a month is very, very important.
Yep.
And so part of your ranking strategy, I think that you use Reddit, Google, and PPC, apart from other things I'm sure that you do as well. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that as well, because I'm sure a lot of people here don't really, or at least I don't use like Reddit, and I'm sure a lot of people don't. So I think that that's an interesting subject for us as well.
Yeah. So like a couple of things, like one thing that I think that is important for people to come in with is like, there's these sacred cows that somehow like emerge in the industry. And I don't know if it's like certain gurus say something, or maybe it was true at one point in time, but it becomes these like hard and fast rules, right? And so when I started kind of looking at like non-rebate strategies specifically, there was always this like conversion rate is king, and conversion rate absolutely matters. The session percentage on Amazon matters, and it can impact your rank. But everyone was so scared to send traffic to a listing externally, because it's not going to convert. Like on if your conversion rate's 15-20% on Amazon, which is not uncommon, it might be 2% with external traffic, right? People are like, I'm not going to send this traffic that's not going to convert because it's going to drive down my session percentage, and then Amazon's going to ding me for that. So like, I'm not going to do that. So that was kind of one sacred cow. I'm like, but then I started seeing this data, and I'm like, I'm thinking things logically. I'm like, if I'm Amazon and somebody comes from that is not shopping on Amazon at all, they may not even have an account, but likely they've got an account and just aren't shopping, and they come from a source outside, I'm going to love that. Because like they were interrupted from whatever they were doing to come. Now I can, whether or not they buy anything, I can retarget them for what they've shopped for. If they've added stuff to cart, I can retarget them. Like they know that there's dollar value in that. So I was kind of using that logic. I'm like, let's just test it. And sure enough, like for whatever negative the conversion rate is from external traffic, the additional eyeballs that you send and the signals of external traffic, just whatever it is, it's just, it blows it up. So yeah, I typically use, it kind of depends on the brand. So I've got a home goods brand that's, that I leverage Pinterest quite a bit for, just because it's aligned with that customer archetype. And then I've got some other brands that, that are kind of more techie and kind of more passion based. So I'll use Reddit and stuff, but Google Ads is definitely something that I use for all of them. So Google Ads is relatively easy to set up. Like anything, it's like, it's a new interface, so it's a little confusing, but very similar to Amazon keywords, frankly. So I literally just take my keyword list from Amazon, I'll dump that in and kind of use that. So you can set up Google Ads in about 20 minutes, and it's just keyword searches. So it's not even visuals. So you don't need to think about ad copy and all this stuff. It's literally just like that words that you type in. So that's kind of step number one that I use across all of them. And then depending on the brand, I'll usually leverage Reddit, which I know is kind of new hat to you. So Reddit is, it's kind of like the place where like your millennials, Gen Xers like go to like digest information on the internet. It's like the homepage of the internet, right? So news, politics, passions, whatever. But what's cool about Reddit is that they've got what's called subreddits, which is communities. Think of it like a forum that you'd want to follow. So if you're really into a sports team, you could go to a subreddit on that sports team. If you're really into knitting, there's all kinds of like subreddits on knitting. So you can use that, those sub communities, which are kind of hyper passionate, ideally around your customer archetypes. You can filter by the country, and then you can do physical display ads on those subreddits. So as people are scrolling their news of the day for that particular passion, your ad could come up. And so my hook is oftentimes like going in aggressive with the price at launch. So it's usually about a 40% discount from what it would normally be. And that's kind of the hook. So, hey, this week only, we're launching a product. It's 40% off. Launch special on Amazon. Here it is. So I'm doing that on Google Ads. I'm doing that on Reddit. Sometimes I'll do that on YouTube as well. And then depending on the market, we'll kind of throw Pinterest in depending sometimes too. So it's kind of hitting and bombarding your listing from multiple external traffic sources. I've moved away from doing like weird stuff with links. I literally just direct link to the page, because if you use like a Pixelfy link, that's one thing I did notice in the backend data was I had a Pixelfy link on my backend data. So I think it was like guising the actual true traffic source. So I hit it up with a straight traffic source. And yeah, that's the external traffic strategy, and it works like gangbusters, and it's awesome.
So with the Reddit, for example, do you think that, because I mean, I'm not American, I'm sure you know that, and I don't live on that side of the world. And I think I could be wrong. I think Reddit is more for that side of the world. Am I wrong?
I don't know, honestly. It's like I'm aware of it.
I feel like it's more like an American, maybe also Canadian, but I feel like it's I don't like I'm originally from New Zealand, right? But I live in Israel. And I don't think that like in New Zealand I really knew much about Reddit that I can think of. But I've only know about Reddit through Google, right? When you Google something, it'll take you sometimes to Reddit, but I've never done any marketing on there.
It's hard to say. I think the good thing is like, even if it's like 30,000 for your niche, like there's different sizes and stuff. You can see the number of people that are part of a subreddit. I'm agnostic. I mean, there's less buying intent from Reddit, so you've got to realize like people aren't on Reddit to shop. So you're not going to see the same conversion. Whereas Pinterest is a little bit more shopper centric. So like I think you got to realize the behavior characteristic of the traffic source. But I'm agnostic. An eyeball is an eyeball. Like I could care less if it's going to visit my listing. Give me a session and send signals to Amazon, and ultimately some of that will convert. Like I'm kind of agnostic, but yeah, I don't know. I think it kind of depends. I'm not sure how geocentric it is, but most of us as sellers on Amazon US, there's definitely people that are in your niche that will be on Reddit, and you can kind of captivate that audience at launch.
So that's what. Before we get into Yaro's question, do you feel like Reddit, for example, is fitting for all niches? Like I, for example, have 2 beauty brands and a baby brand, right? So do you feel like it depends on your niche or not really? Like would it make sense to start to advertise your product on Reddit, for example, for beauty brands?
I would say 100% for beauty. I mean, I think that there's a niche for everything on Reddit. It kind of is one of those things where like you can find your people on Reddit in your community. So, but I 100% agree. Like I guarantee that there's like forums for new moms that like people are posting articles all the time about new mom stuff, right? So 100% I'd say for those two categories for sure. I will say that Reddit for me is more of a launch instigator. Like it's not a ongoing traffic source that I'm going to like send like I don't think someone's going to be on there and just see your normal priced item unless it's somewhat unique and like click on the ad and go to buy it. For me, it's more about like, hey, we actually have a pretty compelling launch offer, and like really kind of honing in on that and sending the external signals. Like for me, it's worth that investment. Whereas Google ads and other stuff and YouTube ads, I'll kind of run those ongoing maintenance. So for me, Reddit's a little bit more of a lightning in a bottle launch tool. But I do think that it would work across most niches. Like I did an example on like gardening, which is like, you think who the hell would give a shit about gardening and or be on the internet talking about gardening. And there's like a rabid community about gardening and like setting up DIY greenhouses and stuff. So like, I think there's, if there's people that are passionate about something, there's pockets in the internet and specifically Reddit that absolutely exists and you can tap into specifically at launch.
Okay. So Yara asked, out of that keywords and master list you prepare, which do you use for Google and Reddit ads?
Yeah, so Google ads is all keyword based. So it's very similar to Amazon pay-per-click. And you can even just take your like master keyword list that you want to target at launch and kind of plug that into Google. They've also got some like Google Words tools where you can find out what people are searching on Google as well. But Reddit is not keyword based. Reddit it's similar to Facebook in the sense that you're kind of targeting interests, but instead of interest, it's a subreddit. So you're targeting communities or pockets of people in terms of where they're looking on Reddit for content, and you're not using keywords in that case.
Okay, Yara, I hope that answered your question. We have another question here. How to exclude niche keywords from PPC? how to exclude niche keywords. Does he mean by how to negative exact? What does he mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can negative them, Andrew. That's like the easy way. But honestly, I mean, maybe we can kind of get into my launch pay-per-click strategy a little bit too. I don't use auto broad or phrase at all for at least the first 2 weeks, usually the first 3 weeks. So I think that's another like sacred cow that existed for a long time, which is like, go out with your auto campaign and that will discover which words are good for your product. And then you can like hone those down into exact mate. I'm like, no, like I've done my keyword research. I understand my customer. I've looked at what terms and like, kind of siphoned through kind of similar to you and figured out what do I think is hyper relevant to describe my product that I know I can convert on, and what are the longer tail words. So I know what words I want to go after. And so for me, when I launch, it's all exact manual. I add the phrase and broad to like discover new words later. The last thing you want to do the first couple weeks on Amazon, in my view, is to confuse Amazon, so to speak. I think that when you serve up an auto campaign, let's say you've got purple lipstick and it's like this really niche lipstick you're going after. Well, if you do like, it's going to serve up red lipstick and black lipstick, and it's going to go after words if you set up auto broad match that is not what you want, and it's going to send the wrong signals. So for me, it's about really targeted exact match campaigns, and then I build on those after ranking's been achieved initially. The other thing I do is I don't know about you, Sharon, or your exact process, but for most of my hyper relevant words, I used to bucket them together, like 3 to 5 words in a bucket. But now I'm literally doing a single word, a single exact campaign for all my relevant words. So I'll have like 40 campaigns sometimes at launch that are exact match only. So
the thing about me is when I first started coaching or started YouTube, I lived in the bubble of my own products, right? Because you tend to live in the bubble of your own products because you don't really know about the million different products there are, because that's what you know. And between when I started and today, I've coached over 700 people, and which is a lot. And it's one-on-one. It's not through courses or anything.
Trench warfare.
And so what I've learned through that is that, it took me a year until I brought out a new PPC video on YouTube, because what happened when I was like, holy shit, there isn't just one strategy that works for every single product. Like every single product requires something different, and it's also dependent on the differentiation. It's dependent if they've taken one product and they've repurposed it. It depends on many different things. So I think that first of all, I don't do it exactly the same way as you, but I definitely do agree with you that it definitely makes sense. Like you need to know who your buyer avatar is. You need to know your keywords, right? Knowing your keywords is very important. The thing is, in my experience, through other people's products, because my products would work perfect for what you're talking about, right? But through other people's products and through my coaching, it depends on the product. Like I've got, for example, a client who has like 12 different toys, right? And the toys that she sells, there isn't, you know how we have the 80-20 rule? 80% of the sales come from 20. It just does not apply to her products because her products get sales from so many different keywords that it's insane. And I think that I don't love auto campaigns. I used to say that they're okay. I don't love auto campaigns. I do believe in broad, because that way you're giving Amazon the root keyword, right? You're giving it the root. You're saying, as long as it has this, go after it. Because I do think it's important to discover things. And also it tells you how well you've optimized your listing. So I do believe in broad. And I also do believe, obviously, in exacts. I do believe in having one campaign per keyword when it's the keywords you're trying to rank for, right? So I think that they're both important. And that's the way that I do it. And again, it's only through seeing so many of other people's products, right?
And you know what? I think you bring up a really good point, and I agree. And there's also different thoughts for launch versus maintenance and all kinds of different stuff. I think the one thing that I could say about myself, and that I would definitely recommend everybody else to do, is I took elements. Again, I'm obsessed with Amazon, so I listen to everything and everyone. So I took opinions and thoughts from a lot of different people, and also outside of Amazon. I don't think people do that enough. Like digital marketers that are building really cool D2C brands, Like, how are they structuring their products, their marketing, their voice? I kind of take all that stuff and I Frankenstein it in together for what like the theory that I have. And then I also experiment. So I think that that's like, you shouldn't listen to everything that I say or everything that Sharon says. Like, I think it's really important to get a diverse amount of
trial and error
without locking yourself up where there's so many opinions you don't know where the hell to go. Like, focus on a couple opinions that you think are substantial and make sense, but you've got to piece together and be creative and experiment for yourself. Like, I never would have gone after Reddit unless I just decided, like, let's give this a shot. I never would have like assessed my own backend Amazon data unless I had to ask the question. So I think that you've got to kind of do that combination and then figure out what works for you and then test it. And this stuff changes all the time. And I think the only way I also never would have discovered that rebates were on the downhill. And again, you can still do rebates, whatever. I'm not trying to say that you can't do it, but I've never done
rebates. I never did giveaways. I've never done rebates. I know that, we call it today search, find, buy. I know that it works and etc. Personally, I haven't done that because I'm very much my opinion, which I'm careful of what I say here because my beautiful other co-host Isabella has a rank bell, which is search, find, buy, and they rank your products for you. My experience and my opinion is if I can't get my product ranked through targeting with PPC or, what we've talked about through my buyer avatar and get them to stay there, then I've got a shitty product because I should be able to go after my hot buyers, right? Because on Amazon, they're ready to buy. That's the thing about PPC on Amazon. They're ready to buy your product. You just need to get them to buy yours. Yep. If I can't get them to do that, then, that's my opinion and my experience.
I agree, but I think the point is that like you can't be a sheep in this game. Like you've got to take information and piece it together and figure out what you think makes sense for you and your brands and how you want to run your business. And then you've also got to sprinkle in regular creativity testing and developing your own playbook, right? So all I do is kind of like share my playbook and it's going to change. Like it'll be different 6 months from now. And what we say today, half of it might not be right. Like that's part of the game. But I think unless you're creative and you can't distill your own playbook from others and Frankenstein stuff together, I think it's difficult. But those that do it, frankly, I think that's where the secret sauce is. So
yeah, I totally agree. Okay, I've neglected a few of the questions or the comments here, so let's put some up. So Tom Norton says, we've implemented Adam's keyword strategy as a part of our product research, which has given us great product opportunities. Adam rocks. I totally agree with that.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Adam seems to be a polite person with positive vibes. Keep up the good work. Good on you, Adam. 5 stars for you.
I swear every once in a while, but I am nice.
Swearing is fine. We're on Danny's, Salutations by Danny. Danny, I'm like a mini me of him. I swear all the time. Yara wrote, from where better drive external traffic for kids' toys? From Reddit still or YouTube? I think Pinterest is also something that.
Yeah, I was going to say Pinterest would be a good one. Again, I think that there's stuff on Reddit's a little bit. You have to kind of think about who's actually who's buying the toy. Like you're not. I'm assuming you're not marketing to kids. So it's like if you're not marketing to kids, where do those parents and or uncles and grandparents, like where do they go to actually transact on toys, or where do they find out about them? So I think you have to ask that question. But yeah, I think YouTube and Pinterest would be where I would probably focus for toys.
You just said something really important, which I always felt like I was one of the only people that used to speak about it. And I love what you just said. I'd like to elaborate on that. We need to remember who is actually buying a product, right? Not who the end person that's getting. So if we're selling a toy, we're actually selling the product or trying to get the parents to buy the product, right? So even on our listing, etc., it needs to make sense. So for example, I a lot of the time tell people, if you're selling a toy, it depends on the toy, but show in the listing how you're going to be helping the parents, to be able to sit on the couch while their kids are playing on the ground with the toy and they've got like 10 minutes to themselves or whatever. It's a very important thing you just said. You need to know who your buyer avatar is and understand who it is that's buying the product first, rather than trying to sell it to the kids. So that's something important.
Yeah, and so maybe just to kind of riff off that a little bit, and I kind of talked about how ranking and and the back end of Amazon is very mathematical and algorithmic, which is very true. It's not a human being, it's a machine that's deciding things. So the Amazon element is very mathematical, but for me, the product experience is very behavioral. So I think you've got to match behavior with mathematics, right? And so your job as an Amazon seller, once you've got your product all down and everything else, is to figure out the math and how do I send the signals, the mathematical signals to Amazon and how to rank this thing. But the front end is very much behavioral. It is who is going to buy this? What do they care about? What are they afraid of? Where do they hang out? Where do they communicate? What is the reason why my product would be chosen over what else is on the first page? What is the visual differentiation? How do I visually tell the story? How do I tell the story with words? How do I tell the story with photographs? How do I let them trust my brand based on the like what they see? Like, so that is a very human behavioral based thing, and you're trying to impact the behaviors and influence the behaviors. And then the Amazon side is mathematical, kind of making sure that you hit those triggers. So I think it's a combination of the two that are really, really, really important. So you've got to get into the mind of your buyer for sure to do this effectively.
100%. And for those that don't know, I have a how do you know your buyer avatar video on YouTube. Just throwing that in there.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one. Buyer avatar is everything. You got to know who you're selling to, right? Yeah. Not only that, it's so much easier to build a brand around your buyer avatar when you know who you're selling to, right? When you know who you're selling to, it's so much easier to find products because you just sell the products that they want, right?
Yep.
So I think that's an important one.
And by the way, this is coming from somebody who used to think that was all kind of foofy bullshit. Like I was like, what? Like, okay, I was always like, I wasn't like anti-marketing, but I always kind of thought it was a little bit of like, keep in mind, I come from a professional background where we used to spend millions of dollars with agencies. So I'd have to sit with these marketing agencies that we were cutting 7-figure checks to. And I'm like, man, this is such a circle jerk. I'm like, this is stupid. But as I've started to kind of get into my own brands and build them out, like, there really is magic in a bottle when you can kind of encompass and follow through what a customer's journey is, kind of as they purchase products and as they kind of pursue the passions that they care about. I think it's really important. So it does seem like a little foofy, but it absolutely isn't. And this is coming from a converted somebody that used to think 100%. It was bullshit.
100%. I'm the opposite of you. I come from a kick-ass entrepreneurial background. So I've been in, selling online since I was 15. I've been in this game for a really long time. And I think I've kind of always known that not always, but buyer avatar, people will say, well, who's the buyer avatar for a garlic press, right? I mean, it does matter about what you're selling, I think, but still, when you understand, Danny had McLean on a couple of weeks or a week or so ago, or I can't remember when, and they were talking about this, and it was a good show for anyone who didn't see that. But knowing who your buyer avatar is will help you with finding future products, will help you with knowing where to advertise your products, because you just go wherever they hang out. A lot of people forget about Facebook groups as well, right?
Yep.
So you're 100%. Talking about, what did you talk about? What did you call it? Reddit, the little mini Reddit groups.
Subreddits.
So you were talking about subreddits, and it reminded me how I tell people, well, find where your buyer avatar hangs out, right? And go into those Facebook groups. So if you're selling products to nurses, get into all the nurse Facebook groups and ask the admins if you can also ask questions, like ask the questions there, ask them, hey, I'm thinking about this product, etc.
And I think a key part of it for me is honestly, like, I mean, there's all these like marketing terms and all this stuff where, I mean, I boil it down to like hyper common sense, which is just, you've got to empathetically think like a customer. Okay. And like, I think a lot of people like somehow disassociate like the customer, like being a customer when they build Amazon products. And they're like, if you put up the same bullshit that is on the front page now that has 500 reviews, like, no, you're not going to make it. But if you put up and you've got an angle for, hey, I'm going to do my listing photo this way, it's going to be a certain angle. And I've got this feature that I can visually represent and differentiate so people can see it. And I'm bringing this like Western brand to the table, and this is how I'm going to write my copy. And like, if you think like a customer scanning that page, like, okay, if I'm a customer, would I buy this, or why would I buy it? And that's a very simple, common sense way to do it. And if the answer is like no, or a little bit like, I'm not quite sure, then you're probably not going to make it. Like, it's not, people think it's like this rocket science. Like, I've got to do it's as simple as like, you as a customer putting yourself in their shoes, what would your experience be? And if they saw your product on slot 6 on Amazon, would they buy it and why? And you can help
Would they even
uncover
click
that
on
by
it?
asking people. Or would they click on it? Yeah, 100%. There's different conversions. It's yeah, you're right. Click and then buy, for sure.
Because you said something important there was visual differentiation, which a lot of people don't think about. You know, because I coach, I get a lot of people that come to me and I'm like, well, what's different about your product? And then they're like, well, the quality of the product. Now, quality is important. Don't get me wrong. Quality of the product is not a differentiation, in my opinion. Quality is number one, right? But I'm like, but if they can't see the differentiation in your main image, and if your product looks exactly the same as everyone else's and there's nothing different there, why are they even going to click on you? They don't even know about your differentiation point. And then people are like, yeah. So visual differentiation is something that's important, and you worded it great. Yeah. Victoria wrote 40 separate campaigns or 40 separate ad groups.
Campaigns.
Really about campaigns. Do you use ad groups?
Not really.
I don't.
And to be fair, I'm not like I don't consider myself a pay-per-click expert. I just got my own methodologies on how I do it. But yeah, I'll take hyper relevant words, especially if they've got over 1,000 searches a month, and I'll put them in an individual campaign. And then either as the search volume goes down or the relevancy is a little bit more broad, like lipstick versus purple lipstick, like I'd put those in I'll bucket those together based on search volume as it gets deeper down. But there's usually a solid 10 to 15 words that I'm like, I know this is my product. I know I want to rank for this. I know I can win on this word, and I want to have a dedicated budget so that I can control the sessions and eyeballs and bids. So I keep those as individuals, but it usually works to between 20 and 40 campaigns when it's all said and done at launch. And then those can sometimes get trimmed up, and then we'll add broad and phrase, and so it grows over time. But
cool. Nira said, I love your approach. Know your avatar first, create your strategy second. Nira is a good friend of mine.
Cool.
Baptiste, move with the herd and end up being slaughtered.
I love it.
Hey, Adam from Pakistan. Really, really follow you and learn from you.
Awesome, brother. By the way, there's a really cool both Aussie and Pakistan community that I didn't realize. Like, you talk about like subcultures within the Amazon game. I've been blown away by the growth of those two communities. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's actually a lot more than that. Like, you know, I'm from Israel. There's a really big Israeli group of sellers. Is like, I don't know, at least like 20,000 sellers or something in Israel as well. Every country, it's different. There's also heaps of sellers in Canada, right? There's a huge Canadian, but Australia and New Zealand, I think there's more sellers in Australia than there is in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But
it's just cool pockets, like geo
it's
pockets.
Awesome.
That's neat.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can be anywhere in the world and do what we do, right?
100%.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Stuart, who's one of my homies, wrote, we often think too much like a seller and not enough like a buyer. That's very true. Yeah. Very true. Yaro said, thank you. Subscribed to Adam like a week ago. Already watched most of his videos. That's a lot of videos. Good stuff. Continue what you're doing, please.
Appreciate it, man.
Mario said, Adam, do you fly under radar and choose low competitive niches or jump in niches with high sales? What sales volume of niche to consider it competitive?
No, that's a good question. So I think my usual pocket is about 15 to 30 grand a month in revenue is like pretty typical. There could be seasonal spikes in that. So I rarely launch in season. So if there is a seasonal spike, I'll launch rank and accumulate kind of some maintenance reviews and stuff like that in advance of that. So say it's like a Q4 product, I'll launch it in like August. But generally speaking, it's that 15 to 30K cluster. I also like to enter like products that I think have a baseline of demand now that I could see growing in the years ahead. Because I do think that there is a first mover advantage. Like if you can get in 14 months before stuff becomes really, really mainstream, but it's still doing 15 grand a month when you get into it, I think that could be pretty powerful. And that actually happened with one of my products in Q4. I think it was doing about 10 to 30 grand a month with like spikes up to 50, 60 when I got into it. And I did 350 in it. I did a video on it, but I did 350 in it in the 30-day period at Christmas. So baseline demand is important. I think the one thing I would say about like the dollar ranges, I think dollar ranges inform your budget and like your risk tolerance. And as you get into higher dollar revenue products, you've got to have Amazon chops because it does require some more skill. And you do have to have a risk tolerance. Like you're gonna have to dump 30, 40, 50 grand into product inventory before you know whether or not it's ranked or successful. But
Cash
for me, yeah, but for me, I think regardless of whatever kind of slice of the revenue you get into, which is kind of informed more by budget and experience, for me, it's very much about like, to use that analogy, like zig when they zag. Like, so like some stuff that I like to do, like I like to go after that cluster, but I also like to go after like bigger products. I like to go after products that have some element of work that's going to like dissuade a lot of people that are just in it for the quick buck. I like to do like molds, so like stuff that requires custom molds. I'm not afraid of electronics. I'll do firmware stuff like that requires actual electronic engineering to get the product to where it needs to be. So like for me, I think it's about like choosing a revenue range that you feel comfortable with for your budget and experience, but also going after stuff that is a little bit harder. And it doesn't need to be like crazy hard. It's like, it's literally, it could be like doing a $2,000 mold will like take 90% of people out of the game because they're just too lazy to do it. So it's like going after stuff that's a little bit more unique and difficult, I think is an important lens in addition to the revenue range. So long-winded way of saying 15 to 30 grand a month.
I'm going to put my 2 cents on here as well, because product research is like one of my things. So I personally love going into niches, right? And I think niches are, there's a lot of gaps in the market that
100%.
I know that a lot of people used to say to me, but Sharon, you're so creative, because it's true. I'm very creative, right? And sometimes I see things that other people may not because of my creativity rather than the algorithmic side of me, because I'm also very analytical, not analytic, very analytical as well. But I'm a lot more creative than what I am analytical, right? And I think that you can find a lot of gaps in the market, and there's a lot of potential in niches. And because I do coaching, I take into consideration who's listening to us. So there's the people that have, a lot of cash flow, and then there's the people that have a little bit less, etc. And my 2 cents on it is you got to figure out how much money you have as well, and what kind of product that allows you to get in. And, you said something about molds. I had a coaching call with someone the other day, and he was looking to bring in to market certain types of figurines, right? And each one of them, you could fit five pieces on a mold, and each mold was going to cost $2,000. Anyway, it was going to cost him around $10K. And it's his first product. And I was like, $10K, it's your first product. And this isn't someone who's now got $50K in the bank. Yep. And I was like, hey, why don't you go and buy a 3D printer? Because they're not that expensive. And to a little bit of testing with it through Etsy, Amazon, whatever it may be, through 3D printing them. Right? Like, I'm not going to pretend I know a whole lot of 3D printing on small products. We 3D print products before we send it, we create the molds, etc. But I will say that you got to really understand the product development side of things as well. And another good person to follow on that is also Kian Golzari, who's a good friend of mine. And understand that before you start spending a whole bunch of money on molds, 100%. Right? You gotta remember that not everyone's been in China a million times like you have, and understand that. And you gotta understand what kind of product fits you right now, right? Like I'm at the point of where you're at right now.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. And I think you do have to have a lot of self-awareness in this game for sure, in terms of understanding where you're at in the process, what your budget is, what your skill sets currently are. And we kind of talked about at the outset, like you still do have to get your Amazon degree. And there's expensive ways to get your Amazon degree, and there's less expensive ways to get your Amazon degree. But you're going to need to get it regardless. So I do think that context matters. If this is your first product, like if it were me and I didn't have a lot of budget, I would definitely go for something that did like less than $5,000 a month, because I'm going to go through the steps. I'm going to learn. If I make mistakes, it won't be super costly. But still, there's some fundamentals that I think you can still really should always have, which is you should still deeply understand the customer. You should have, I like passionate based customers that care about the stuff that they're buying, because then you can get a higher margin. I do think that you shouldn't go to the factory and say, just put this logo on it with this UPC code and like send me the package because I checked out 3 samples, I'm good to go. Like, still be like, ask questions of the factory, do some unique stuff, get exclusivity if you can. Like, I still think there's some competitively strategic things that you should do regardless of the budget. But 100% agree with you. Like you gotta walk before you can run for sure. And I wouldn't recommend if I went in with like a product that did $100,000 a month, I would have got my ass kicked and probably would have stopped at that one product and never been on this podcast, frankly. So
because through again, I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to like I think you watch me, so I'm not like salesy or anything. I talk about my coaching because I realized how much I didn't know anything when I first started YouTube and stuff. Because you think, not you, I'm talking about me specifically, you think you're a know-it-all, and then, not that I thought I was a know-it-all, but you know what I mean. And then you see all these hundreds and hundreds of different products, and you're like, holy shit, it's so different from this product. Or you can even see the same product. I'm going to give it a terrible product example, right? The Milestone blanket, which is like such a bad product, right? And you'll see a Milestone blanket, one person who launched it, and then you'll see another person that launched it, and they're like totally different results, right? Yep. Don't do Milestone blankets. It's a bad example on purpose. But so that's why I just say, because I there was some point for me, just because we're both on YouTube, there was some point for me when I was like, I didn't bring out videos for a little while because I was like, everyone's so different. Like it's so dynamic. I know that like the strategies, etc., they're more or less the same, or the structures are the same, but everything's so dependent on the person, how much money they have, the niche, right? Like their differentiation point. Like if they've repurposed a product, are they focusing specifically only on a very specific like buyer avatar? And then I had this moment when I was like, I got to be careful, with what I say, because I got over that though. I was like, fuck it. People need to also understand that, it's not just our way.
I take that responsibility it's a pretty heavy responsibility that I think a lot about too. And for me, that's why I think it's about being as transparent as possible. Like, I think that there's a pressure in the public Amazon game of like always being perfect and never making mistakes and like always having the answer. And for me, it's like I don't always have the answer. Like all I'm going to do is like, this is the launch I did. This is the numbers. This is how I thought about it. This is what the margins look like. This is some of the sequences that took place. And like if we can all drop nuggets for each other, I think that's the most important thing. But as individual sellers and people passionate about the Amazon game that want to do this as a discipline, for us, it's about picking up the nuggets and having that discerning eye of like, hey, here's a nugget that's relevant to me. And then also having self-reflection, honesty about yourself. So you can self-reflect, you can take the nuggets that matter and also understand how to apply it in your individual situation. And that's where it's like half art, half science, right? But yeah.
Well, you got the perfect wording for stuff. Okay, we've got a question here. Would you use the same campaign for 6 very similar products, i.e. color variations of the same, or one campaign for each? We'll probably have 2 different answers here. We'll start with you.
I'm not a huge like launch of I've started to do more variations, but I'm probably not the best to answer. My general approach on this has been I launch a single variation to start and like make sure that I validate that, make that kind of the hero, and then I tuck in variations on top of that. And then those campaigns are very relevant words, so a description of the product or material. So generally speaking, I like to do different ones, but I'm admittedly not an expert in this area and don't do a ton of variations, especially all at once. But Sharon, you might have a better answer.
Yeah, I'll briefly answer it, but I do have like an in-depth video on this, so I'll briefly answer it because we need to wrap it up soon. It's funny how I said to you, if we don't have anything to talk about, we'll wrap it up, and we've got an hour. I'm sure we could spend another hour here, so I'll have to definitely bring you back on. But to answer the question, I specifically, and this is the way that I do it, is I would have a campaign where I call it for the bestseller, or the one that's going to be, the one that I think is going to be the bestseller, and then I put that one into the campaigns. And then I have variant specific campaigns, just like you said. So for example, if I have a water bottle that's pink, it'll go after specifically, or it's got a unicorn on it, so it'll go after specifically unicorn pink specific keywords. And then I've got a black one that's got whatever. So I have variant specific ones where only that one ASIN, that one variation is in there. And then I put the best seller, or the one that I predict is going to get the best sales, because I would have done
Similar to me, I call it the hero. I have a hero ace, and then the variant basically gets traffic based on hyper relevant words that are in the campaign or spillover traffic. Like somebody came in because of the hero, and that's where the bulk of the traffic is. Like, oh shit, I like the pink one, so I'll buy the pink one.
Yeah,
so, 100% agree.
So, and then those I usually put in a broad campaign, because then I'm putting in, for example, like pink. Don't sell a water bottle. Do not sell. I use terrible examples on purpose because I've got so many good products in here from sellers as well that I can't share it. So I always use terrible products. And I also have water bottles here. If you only knew how many water bottles I have here, it's like crazy. Anyway, so I usually put those in broad campaigns and exact campaigns so that I can get some more keywords through there. And then she said also slightly different designs, all different ASINs. So it depends. It's a difficult question to answer when you don't know what it is as well.
Yep.
Asaf said, Sharon, Evan, you're amazing. Thank you very much. Saibi said, there are so many levers in managing Amazon. Do you have your hand on every one of the levers or delegate most tasks? Adam.
So for me, I think, first of all, I think that if you come into this Amazon game, you've got to be a student of the game. And so I'm an advocate of when you first get into this, like not outsourcing stuff. Like I think you got to realize where your deficiencies are and make sure that those gaps are covered. But like, yeah, I'm sorry you don't like math, but if you don't like math, then you shouldn't be in Amazon. I'm sorry you don't like aesthetics and thinking about brand, but like if you don't like that, you shouldn't be in Amazon. So I do feel like even if it's a deficiency or blind spot or a weakness for you, you should understand every element from product to design photography to shipping logistics to pay-per-click to ranking. So I think it all matters, frankly. That said, I feel like once you've started to generate success on Amazon, you then earn the right to not clean the toilet, so to speak. So like if you don't like cleaning your bathroom, well, guess what? If you're a poor student and you're like learning it, you can't pay a maid to come in and clean the bathroom. You got to just put on your rubber gloves and clean the bathroom. Like, I feel like that's what you need to come in as an Amazon seller. Now, when you become more successful, I do think that you should take the tasks that either you don't like or that are an ineffective use of your time. So some for me, like I hate bookkeeping. I think it's so anyways, that was the first thing I outsourced. I don't think you should outsource customer service initially. A lot of people say like outsource. No, you should be the one that sees the questions coming in and concerns coming in from your customers. But for me, once you hit like, I would say 15 to 20 grand a month in revenue, that's when you can start thinking about, hey, what are some tasks that I can cost effectively distribute to somebody else? And then as you hit 40 grand in revenue, then you can be like, okay, maybe I'm ready for a pay-per-click agency now. And when you hit 75 grand, maybe it's like, okay, I actually need to bring in a team that manages some of my stats and gives me information to make business decisions on. So I think it kind of, as you get more revenue, you can kind of justify and fund that. You should, but initially I'm not a fan of people outsourcing stuff from the get-go. I'm a fan of investing in coaching and investing in information and knowledge. I think that's a prudent investment, but I do think that this is a apprenticeship. It's a trade. It's similar to like a carpenter. Like you've got to learn the craft before you can kind of pass stuff off. That's my personal take.
What do you think about like bringing in VAs and teaching them your way of doing things?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Yep, I'm fine with that.
So I was smiling a lot because I am a control freak, right? I'm very much aware of like the good things about me and then like the bad things about me. And something that's not that good is the fact that I'm a control freak. And my husband and I, we're a husband and wife team. And thank God he does the things that I hate and he's good at it and he likes doing it. So it's all good. But there are things where, over time I've been like, the more things you do, right? Like you bring on YouTube and you have another business and another business. And I'm like, I'm only one freaking person, like there's only so much that I can do. There are specific things that I don't outsource. For example, PPC, I still don't outsource. I do it all myself. And things like that. I think that it really depends on who you are and knowing what you're good at, like you said. But I agree 100% with what you said. Like you threw every single element, in my opinion, first yourself. It's just like when people say, well, should I use a sourcing agent the first time? But in my opinion, you shouldn't. You should do it yourself the first time, right? So you understand the entire process. And then later you can start using a sourcing agent. Obviously, it depends on the person, but I agree with you 100%. I think it's important to go through every single thing yourself first. And definitely there are things that you should outsource, in my opinion. Like if you come across, I'm sure you saw my my ugly side of Amazon video.
There's a time to lawyer up and bring in the big dogs for sure.
Yeah. So when shit happens, bring in a lawyer and things like that.
Yeah.
So that was our questions, Adam. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up now because it's now been an hour and 5 minutes, and I appreciate your time, and I don't want to take too much more of your time. And it was an amazing podcast today. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to reach out to you or to watch you or to see you, whatever, where can people find you?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is just to type in Adam Heist to YouTube. So I've got a channel, Heist, that I kind of dump content, again, at least weekly, oftentimes more than that. So I share all the story, good, bad, and ugly of my experience on Amazon, my nuggets that I think are valuable. So I think that's one spot. I also announced pretty recently too, I actually became a partner in the software company Sellerize.
Yeah. So I think tell us about that quickly before we wrap it up.
Yeah, so I mean, when Amazon first came out with the request a review button, I can't even remember. It was probably about a year ago. The first software company to really jump on that with the Chrome extension was Sellerize. So I became familiar with them through that. And then they did a desktop software where you could kind of set, criteria for when to trigger the request a review button. So that was my familiarity with Sellerize. There's two softwares I use and recommend. Helium 10's one, Sellerize is the other. It's what I use every day, frankly. So I was just a fan of the software. I had kind of used it over the last year. They've added a ton more features since then, obviously. And it's become kind of my daily go-to for a lot of things. So yeah, I was a fanboy of it, kind of talked about it. And then things came together here over the last month. And Dima, the founder, we kind of synced up. And so I'm now an equity partner in that software company, which is kind of cool. So check out the software. Use the promo code Heist if you're interested in checking it out for 30 days free. I would just say that there's a lot of amazing stuff in there now, but there is going to be some pretty mind-blowing stuff, especially if you like my keyword process and some other stuff. The cool thing about having a software company is instead of doing stuff in Google Sheets, I've now got a team of developers where I'm like, hey, here's my Google Sheet. Here's how I want to do this. Turn this into software that you can automate and kind of push at a button. So become a member of that software if you're interested. There'll be a lot of cool stuff that aligns with how I approach Amazon here in the near future. And there's already a lot of cool stuff. So yeah.
Cool. I haven't even checked it out yet, so I need to check it out too. I'm not like a huge software person. If I'm honest, I use Helium 10 as well. But there's another one that I love, which is Quantify Ninja, which was actually one of the first with maybe Sellerize to figure out the request for review button as well. But that's really awesome, and congratulations! It's a pretty awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's cool.
Well. So awesome. So thank you so much for coming on, and we will wrap it up now. And and on Monday, we'll let everyone know Isabella will be back with her show on Seller Sessions. So check out Isabella on Monday as well, and I'll be back on next Thursday, and of course, Daddy will be back on Tuesday, and that's it. And thank you all, and I will see you guys in our next session next week.
Sharon, appreciate it. It was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.